It's been a year since the war in Ukraine has broken out, and now, even after 1 year, it doesn't look like the war is going to end anytime soon. We are joined by Danish Ambassador. Sir, how do you see this last 1 year of war, which is, I'm sure like a lot of people have seen its impact on economy, strategic, defense, and all sort of sectors across the world?
Right, you are. It's an unprovoked war, aggression against Ukraine. It was started by Russia. And now we see, unfortunately, that it's dragging on with loss of thousands of lives, devastating consequences for the whole world. It's unbelievable that in this era of peace that we are facing with a war that is so devastating for all of us across the world. That's really unbelievable.
But sir, there has been tragedies. Thousands of lives have been lost, and millions had to flee their homes to find some shelters and places. But there have been parts of other world also who do not have direct stake in this Ukraine-Russia war, but there has been repercussions that have impacted their economy, their food supplies and everything. So, given that context, how do you see that the world is actually facing something that is happening in Europe?
But, it has a direct impact on all of us. You and people living in Africa, and Latin America, and Asia, everybody is impacted by this war. And I think the best solution is that Russia withdraws and then the war is over. So as long as this war is going on continuing, then you will have so many devastating consequences, impacts for all of us, and it's unbelievable. So there's only one solution to it: get back to your borders, Russia.
Okay, and also we have seen NATO members, USA, and most of European countries standing in solidarity with Ukraine, supplying arms, ammunition, financial aid, and everything. You think, the same amount of energy has been invested in diplomatic dialogue also with Russia or in between the two warring factions?
That I really don't know. What I know of is that there's an unprovoked aggression. Ukraine is standing up against that. They have asked for our help. We are helping, we are supplying them in order to fight for their freedom. And of course, it's really unbelievable that we have this war. The last war on the ground was the Second World War, and the whole European construction was really to avoid the war and build up peace, prosperity. Now we are facing a war which is not only impacting the powers, being an actual partner of this war, but also the world at large, and it's unbelievable. People are having big troubles with energy, with fertilizers and food. So this has and will have a huge negative impact on the planet.
Surely world has seen the impact of energy crisis and fuel crisis, fertilizer crisis. Russia is one of the largest, exporter of these commodities. Ukraine was one of the largest exporter of grains. But with 1 year having passed, how do you see this crisis going forward? Will it continue to be like this, or will there be any way out where people of other part of the world can see some sort of truce or calmness happening there?
It's difficult to see just now because a big bloody battle is happening and going on. I do hope that we'll find a solution one way or another, and the best solution, as I said, is for Russia to withdraw. They started all this mess and they've created a really, really negative impact for all of us. People, innocent people living in Africa, in Asia and Latin America, they're suffering because of that. Hopefully at one day people will realize that war is not the way forward, and as your Honourable Prime Minister has said very clearly, we do not live in the era of war. Therefore we have to put all our forces together in order to secure that peace is restored and we start building up the trust and confidence that this world will need to fight not only the crisis as onto food, fuel and fertilizers, but also the climate changes. We are spending so much money fighting this war on both sides. This money could have been used for poverty alleviation, it could have been used for fight against the climate and so forth. So Mother Planet, Mar, is suffering big time. That was not necessary.
India is strategically placed in a situation where it has a good ties with European countries. It is a strategic partner with USA also, and it has a special strategic privileged partnership with Russia also. How do you see India's role, or can you see any scope of where India can be of some sort of help in bringing down the tension and bringing the two sides on a negotiating table?
Personally, and being in great love for India, I of course see a role for India, but it's not for me to decide what role India would like to play here. I think, however, given the importance of the international profile that India enjoys, and in particular your Prime Minister is enjoying, now with G20 being handled by India, I do hope, and I will express really my expectation that India will be doing what India can be doing. But you also have to look into, there are some historic ties and they cannot just be let's say, cut overnight. So it's about really bringing in whatever good will you have, whatever good intention you have to bring this war to an end. And I take note of the fact that India has helped to secure that the grain could be exported despite the war situation. They've also been very engaged in the situation around the nuclear power plants and so forth. So I think India is doing something, but the question is, of course, can more be done? And that's not for me to answer, it's for you, the Indian government, to look into that.
We have seen recently European countries extending more advanced weaponry to Ukraine, and there's a training going on which will deploy those Ukrainian soldiers maybe for from a couple of months from now. Tanks are coming, maybe some fighter jets are also being another pipeline. So with all the preparation that we see in the field of war in support of Ukraine, does it look like this is the situation that has been there for 1 year is going to end anytime soon?
I think the sad but realistic answer is that this is not going to stop tomorrow or day after. It's something that will be around for a long time, unfortunately, and hopefully there will be an end to it. But where this end lies and how you build up a situation where this end to the war can be, let's say, developed, managed, and so forth, I don't see it coming for the time being. Of course, the most easiest way out of it is for Russia to withdraw.
So have you noticed that there has been some sort of feelers coming from Russian side that they should be negotiating the war and it cannot be decided militarily? The conflict that has been there for almost 1 year cannot be decided militarily, and the only solution will be through diplomatic or dialogue process. So on that, what was the take of yours?
I think, of course, there are a lot of feelers. We can see that by reading international medias, Indian medias, and so forth. Of course, somebody has to do something. Whether it's really happening and if time is right for it is too difficult to say. I think, however, if Russia is not withdrawing, this war will continue, unfortunately. But by the end of the day, of course, you need to find a dialogue to secure that these hostilities are brought to an end. We cannot allow this to continue. Think about the thousands, perhaps 100,000s of lives being lost due to lack of food, due to lack of fertilizers, due to lack of stability, and so forth. So I think that should also be a factor that we have to cater in, that this cannot and should not be allowed to continue forever.
There has been a lot of influx of migration from Ukraine to the European countries, neighborhood especially. If you could just tell me the kind of pressure that your country is also facing in the wake of this Ukrainian war in terms of financial aid, assistance or defense aid that you have shared with Ukraine, and how you're trying to cope with other migration issues and other issues.
But I mean, there has been also to Denmark an influx of refugees from Ukraine. We have put in a lot of regimes in order to help them and integrate them and so forth. And I think we have done a lot here, like many other countries, and that's natural. We stand by Ukraine, we stand with Ukraine. And of course, these Ukrainians who are seeking shelter and so forth, we help them. But it goes without saying that their life would be better in a peaceful, stabilized Ukraine. But unfortunately, there's a war against them, and they have to take whatever decisions they can.
One last question will be that India continues to have its bilateral trade and defense ties with Russia as it has been before Ukraine war and now. Do you think there has been any change from the Indian side with its relation with Russian counterpart, or is there any expectation from the European countries, including yours, that India should have, tempered with or should have done more in terms of the strength of relationship that it has with Russia during this conflict?
Personally, I'm not criticizing India. I understand India. I know the historic background and so forth, but it goes without saying that when I look into what kind of initiatives are being launched by the Indian government to develop a more self-reliant India, that goes also for some of the areas where India, for a long time, India has been dependent on fossil fuel from Russia, weaponry from Russia, and so forth. So I think over the time, this kind of dependency will be reduced naturally as part of the building up of the Indian economy, the creation of schemes that will allow for production and manufacturing of XYZ products and so forth. So it will come at some point of time. And of course, India is on the stretch of developing its economy. It's luckily one of, if not the most impressive growth economy this year and next year. So India is a bright spot, and I'm pretty sure that India will use this kind of positive factor to grow its independence and thereby reducing its dependency wherever it's possible.
Any help or any proposal from Netherlands to diversify India from its traditional base of military hardware, which is essentially Russian, as it may suit European side to have India coming closer to them in terms of defense and security?
Denmark, not Netherlands, but Denmark. Of course, we work very, very intensively with India. We have over the years developed what we call a Green Strategic Partnership, which is really helping and inspiring India to find better ways and means to develop the sustainability and the green growth that was introduced just recently when the union budget proposal was introduced, green growth. So our role is really to inspire India to develop new ways of producing, generating energy, and that will, of course, in the long run, hopefully, but we are very sure about that, will reduce the dependency on fossil fuel and consequently also from Russia. So that's a good stretch on weaponry and so forth. Denmark is not yet there into that, but I take note of the fact that a lot of my fellow countries from my region, they are helping India by building up capacity here in India. So India's dependency on imported weaponry will be reduced. And we see a very strong, now we have the Aero Show coming up and so forth, we see a very, very strong strategy being propelled in India, whereas you had to manufacture much more on your own and self-reliant India. Self-reliant India is also the guarantee that we have a strong India that will play its geopolitical, geostrategical, and geoeconomical role in the world.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you for talking with us and giving your insights on this whole conflict that has been going on for 1 year. We hope that this conflict goes down, people sit together, talk, and millions who have been impacted by the war get back to their homes safely. Thank you
very much. Indeed, it was a pleasure. Let's hope that the war will come to an end. The sooner the better. Too many people are suffering day by day. Every hour counts here. Daniel. Take care.